Good day, students. Welcome to biology lessons. In our class today, we'll continue from where we stopped last week. We started with the topic pests and diseases of crops, and we say pests are organisms that affect crops and also other organisms. And we said example of these pests include variegated grasshopper. We also have stem borer, we have mealybug, we have mirids, we have beetles, we have birds, and we have mammals. These are examples of pests. And in our class last week, we were able to look at the pest grasshopper, and we also look at the pest cassava mealybug. We'll continue from where we stopped last week with other crop pests. In our class today, we'll be looking at bean weevil, Callosobronchus maculatus, the life history or the life cycle of the bean weevil. Male and female adults mate. Fertilized eggs are then laid in the ripening pods in the farm. In this type of reproduction, the eggs are fertilized after mating between the male and female, and these eggs that are fertilized are laid or are dropped down in ripening pods in the farm. They are dropped down in the pods of the bean in the farm. The eggs hatch into larvae, which enters into the bean seed before harvesting. In the store, the larvae feeds on the cotyledons of the beans. The larvae develop into pupae in the store. The pupae later develop into adults, which fly away to mate again in the farm. So we find out that the life cycle of this insect begins in the field when the crop is yet to be harvested. Once these fertilized eggs are laid on the ripening pods in the farm, these eggs will be hatched into the next stage, which is the larvae. And these larvae enter the seeds of the beans before harvesting, yet in the farm or in the field. And then in the store, this larvae now will feed on the cotyledons, that's the seed leaf of these beans. And then if it feeds, it's going to mold and change or develop into what we call the pupae in the store. Then the pupae then later develops and turn into an adult. It is this adult that will now fly and go back to the field or to the farm to get the opposite sex for mating, and the life cycle continues. So from this, we find out that the bean weevil has the 4 stages of development, from the egg to the larvae to the pupae and then the adult. The eggs are fertilized and they enter the pot in the field or in the farm. Then the larvae too. These eggs hatch into larvae, and then the larvae enter the seeds. It is this larvae that feeds on the cotyledons and then develop or metamorphose into a pupae when the crop is harvested in the store. So you find that part of the life cycle occurs in the field, while the other part occurs in the store. And then at the end of the life cycle, the adults will now fly and go back to the field for mating. So this organism exhibits a complete type of metamorphosis with the 4 stages of development: egg, larvae, pupae, and adults. Effect of bean weevil. Effect on bean weevil. The larvae feeds on the cotyledons of the seed, thereby reducing the quality and the value of the beans. Remember, we say this larvae feeds on the cotyledons, that's the seed leaf of the beans. And once that happens, the quality of the bean is reduced, and therefore the value of the beans too is reduced. Control. Fumigate the store in which the beans are stored with fumigants such as methyl bromide. So before you bring your beans from the farm or from the field to the store, you're supposed to fumigate the store for storage of such beans with a fumigant such as methyl bromide to kill the larvae that is already in the seeds of the beans from metamorphosing into the pupa that develops into the adult and causes damage to the bean. Next is the cocoa merit pest, also known as the capsid. Cocoa merit, also known as the capsid from the name. This pest affects the cocoa plants. These are piercing and sucking insects. Remember when we're looking at different types of mouth parts of organisms, we said we have organisms that we group as piercing and sucking, and we said these organisms have a mouth part characterized with pointed proboscis that are able to make hole or pierce into plants and suck out the nutritious part. So these cocoa merit are under the piercing and sucking insect. They attack the young shoot of cocoa, introducing toxic saliva into the sap. This may kill the plant. It can introduce viral disease into the plant. So once this cocoa merit pierce the cocoa plant, they attack the young shoot of the cocoa, and then they introduce their toxic saliva, poisonous saliva into the plant, into the sap of the plant, and this poisonous saliva may kill the plant, and it can also introduce viral disease to the plant. Effects of cocoa merit. Effects of cocoa merit. Cocoa merit cause dieback disease, which reduces the growth of cocoa plants. Fruit yield is reduced. So it causes a disease called dieback, and this disease can reduce the growth of cocoa plants and also will affect the fruit yield of the cocoa. Control. How do we control the cocoa merit? Spray the cocoa farm with coquetine or gamalin 20. So once the cocoa farm is sprayed with coquetine or gamalin 20, it kills the cocoa merit in the farm and reduces its effect. Next is the Yam B2. Heterologous meles. Heterologous meles. Heterologous meles. Heterologous meres. Life history. The mating of the female and male takes place between November and December in the riverine areas, and fertilized eggs are laid. So this organism lay the eggs after mating, and the eggs are fertilized by the male, and this occurs around November and December, and this takes place in the riverine areas. Between December and February, eggs hatch into larvae that feed on the decayed organic substance. So between December and February, after like about 2 months, these eggs hatch into larvae, and this larvae feeds on decayed organic substance in the riverine area. The larvae mold thrice before developing into pupa. So the larvae will triple its size. It's going to mold thrice the size of the initial organism, and then it develops into a pupa. In March, the pupa develop into adults after molting. So in between February and March, this pupa develop into adults after molting. The adults then fly to the areas where yams are planted between April and June. They dig holes into the soil to search for yam tubers. They feed on them and damage the tubers. Between October to November, the adult yam beetle undergo breeding migration to the riverine area again for mating. So once these larvae develop into a pupa, in between March, these pupae develop into adults, and then these adults then fly to areas from the riverine areas. They will leave the riverine area and fly to areas where we have yams planted, and this flight takes place between April and June. And once they get to such field, what they do is that they dig hole into the soil to search for yam tubers. They affect the tubers, not the leaves, nor the stem of the yam. So once they come in contact with the yam tubers, they will feed on the yam tubers to cause damage on the yam tubers. And after that, between October to November, this adult yam beetle now, because they are mating and laying of eggs occur in the riverine area, they are going to carry out a breeding migration. They will migrate back to the riverine area for mating and for laying of their eggs. Effect of Yam B2. Effect of Yam B2. Adult beetle feeds on the yam tubers, causing serious damage to the tubers and render the tubers valueless. So once they feed on the yam tuber will be damaged and the value of the yam tuber will be reduced. If the tubers are attacked at early stage, the yield is poor. It's going to reduce the yield of the yam tuber if the yam tuber is attacked at the early stage. Control. Dust yam or yam set with aldrin before planting. So the yam that is to be planted is to be dusted with aldrin before planting. This will reduce or control the attack by the yam beetle. And below is the diagram of the life cycle of the yam beetle. And that brings us to an end of our class today. If you look at the diagram, you notice that the yam beetle too exhibits a complete type of metamorphosis because it has 4 stages: the egg, the larvae, the pupae, and the adult. And we say when an organism has 4 stages in its life cycle, it is said to exhibit a complete type of metamorphosis. Remember, we say metamorphosis are a series of changes that an organism undergoes in its developmental stages. And to end the class today, we'll look at the summary of what we've done. We were able to look at some pests of crops, and we started with, in the beginning, we looked at the bean weevil. From the bean weevil, we look at the cocoa merit, and also we look at the yam beetle, their life history, their effects, and their control. When we meet next, we'll be looking at the pests of animals, pests and diseases of animals. Have a nice day. See you next time.